Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Product Coalition podcast. This is the Sydney series and I'm joined today with Scott Middleton. Scott, welcome.
Hey Jay, how you going? Hi everyone.
Great to have you on. I'm really looking forward to this session. It's called Understand Any Product in Under 2 Hours, and we'll get into that very shortly. First, I want to give a shout out to Brainmates as our location sponsor where I'm hosting this podcast from. Brainmates is a product management training and consulting team based in Australia, New Zealand and Denver, USA. Find out more about Brainmates' 3-day workshop for product folks on the 9th of December in Denver at brainmates.com.au. If you just discovered the Product Coalition, welcome. We're a global product management community that started out as a publication at productcoalition.com. We've grown then into a Slack community of over 5,000 product managers around the world. You can join that free by grabbing an invite over at productcoalition.com. If you'd like to watch this podcast of Scott and I, visit YouTube and search for Product Coalition, and we're 100% funded by community support. So if you'd like to support the podcast publication or the Slack community, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/productco. Great to have you on board, Scott.
Yeah,
Looking forward
awesome.
to this session. Thank you firstly for contributing to Product Coalition with your articles on Medium.
No, it's good fun. I love writing. It helps consolidate my own thinking. So
Great. And, without the writers of Product Coalition, it wouldn't exist. So thank you so much for giving so much thought and for sharing that content through this community. Really looking forward to this topic, Understand Any Product in 2 hours, and get into some of the sort of framework and thinking of how you've structured that. But before we do that, with all of the guests, been running a Sydney pub quiz. So you're not born and bred Sydney, are you?
Yeah, I am.
You are? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to test the depth of
your
integration into Sydney.
Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, the Sydney Royal Easter Show is Australia's largest annual event. How many people each year attend the Sydney Royal Easter Show? So firstly, do you attend, Scott?
I try and avoid the crowds. It's a bit hectic. But with the kids, I'm going to be going more often, I think.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So how many go? I would have no idea. Probably north of 100,000.
It is definitely north of 100,000. Apparently 900,000 people each year. So close to a million
should
locally.
have times by 10.
Yeah, 10x. It's a pretty big event. So next one. This is a guess.
What happens if I get too many of these wrong? Do we can the podcast? And
we relocate
I gotta
you to
leave.
Canberra. Yeah,
you voted off the island.
So Sydney is the deepest natural harbour in the world. How many megalitres of water do you think is in the Sydney harbour? I don't know what a megalitre is.
Yeah. How do you even visualise a megalitre? I don't know. I'm going to say 5 billion. Close.
It's a 100x less in this instance. So 504,000 megalitres of water. Do you enjoy the water? Do you get out on the water?
I love sailing. Yeah. I sail regularly in Middle Harbour, up on Pittwater.
Awesome.
Yep. Love the harbour. It's the hardest. This is why I struggle to leave Sydney. When you got sailing like that,
there's nowhere else in the world.
Yeah. Hard to go somewhere else.
Awesome. So on the, don't know if this is in the harbour or not, but the smallest beach in Sydney is what and where?
Oh. Yeah, I'm going to have to pass on that one.
Yeah, okay. Well, it might be a sailing destination spot for you then. So, McKell Beach at Darling Point.
Okay.
Only accessible by boat at low tide.
McKell Beach at Darling. Okay.
There we go.
I'll go check it out.
One for the itinerary. Yeah. And where is your favourite spot to sit by the water in Sydney?
Oh, too many.
Yeah.
There are different reasons for a whole bunch of them. Gordon's Bay for a bit of relaxing snorkeling near Coogee. Balmoral with the kids because it's close by. Pittwater because the sailing's fantastic.
Awesome.
Too many.
You've got one for every event and occasion.
Yeah.
And what about for the New Year's Eve? Anywhere special for that?
Avoid the city is my number one rule. Yeah, but otherwise, like anchoring off Taronga Zoo is fantastic.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Or the Pittwater fireworks are good as well from the water.
Right.
Otherwise, if you can't avoid the crowds, then get out of the city.
Awesome. Yeah, I've done one New Year's Eve in Sydney, and it was quite intense. But it's good to enjoy. It is very special. And can I ask, what's your favourite meetup or conference in Sydney?
Oh, favourite meetup or conference? This one's pretty hard. I've got 2 little kids, so my meetup exposure has significantly reduced over the last.
Understandably,
but I've enjoyed the Product Tank meetups. I think in Sydney, what else? The AI meetups were good.
Cool.
We ran some, and I definitely went to a couple. Super interesting stuff going on.
Cool. Let's get stuck into it. Before we do, would you mind introducing yourself, Scott, and your path into product and Terram Technologies?
So CEO and founder of Terram. We're on the AFR Fast 100 for 2 years running, and we're about 30 people. We're hiring at the moment, so if you're interested, terram.com.au/careers.
Brilliant.
Would love to hear from you. I got into products, so I've been doing that for about 8 years, and really before that had a variety of things. So built and sold a mobile game when I was younger, and I've always had this blend of engineering plus the commercial side plus everything else that goes into shipping something that someone can buy. And it's really just been always the passion, that meeting point. And so when someone invented the title product manager or when I came or wherever, I was like, this is pretty close to what I've been doing. But I wouldn't claim to be a product manager any day of the week, right? It's something I've had to learn and build up skill in. All
right, great, thank you. So today we're going to be talking about, the topic title is Understand Any Product in a Couple of Hours. In 2 hours. Can you tell me firstly, why was this meaningful to you?
So I probably every day, this afternoon I'm going to have to look into a new product that someone wants some assistance building and managing. This happens to me every day of the week. I get asked advice on Friday. I was meeting with a startup who wanted some advice on their product. So from all angles, I'm working on this thing, whether it's with a big company or startup or somewhere in the middle.
Right.
I got to pick it up. And then even I find with things that I'm familiar with, you've often got to go back to basics, and the basics get missed. So this really came out of a daily pain that I experienced. So what's the best way to understand something, and how to do it where you're not missing anything, where you're really getting the broad perspective and then working out where you can deep dive. And the faster I can do that, and the faster I can help my team do that, help our clients do that, help anyone do it, the better. And
I imagine for a business like yours, those repeatable patterns are important to ensure the quality is always the same and you're able to do this rapidly.
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
Brilliant. So the first question is, how does it go wrong then? Or maybe a question before that, what's the outcome you're looking for after?
Well, look like you sit down with someone, and everyone, anyone, whether it's experienced product manager or someone just getting started with building a product, they always have kind of they're going to jump right into the detail of the problem at hand, or they're so familiar with the domain that they kind of skip the 101 when they're trying to convey what's going on.
Okay.
And the 101 really helps. So often you're like, hey, what are you doing? What's the product? And you kind of get this like, well, we're going to market with, and that you'll get a list of features that they've got, and really you got to bring it back to kind of like, all right, well, who's the customer? What's the business model? Because until you've understood those, you then really can't get into much else without any context. So really trying to establish some context. And I find, step one, I'll kind of run through the steps. So
please do.
Ask a lot of questions.
Right.
Ask a lot of why.
Yep.
And kind of almost set the scene that you're going to ask a lot of dumb questions at the outset. So I'm just going to ask why, pretend I don't know anything. And then, who the next question, step 2 is who's the customer value proposition. Step 3 is understanding the business. And I find the best way to do that is the lean canvas.
Okay.
Step 4 is getting a bit of a quick roadmap. Where are they trying to head to? And step 5 is where you go deep on something that you want to uncover that you think is going to help your understanding of where an issue might be. And so if I get back to the beginning of really understanding something, the beginning's really important, not just for your own knowledge building, but you've got to build some rapport pretty quickly.
Right.
And a lot of that is asking questions. Question asking is one of the best ways to build rapport. So, hey, tell me about what you're doing. And you've really got to let it, this is something I'm constantly trying to work on, but you got to let this play out. You got to let people explain it in their terms before you start trying to, bring the frameworks to bear. Because if you bring the framework straight up, then people feel a bit beaten over the head with structure. Yep. So you got to let it play out. And also I find by letting it play out, people are going to go down really interesting. They're going to say really interesting things that they don't realize are kind of like where the gold lies in what they're talking about.
Right. Okay. So I'm hearing lots of similarities between this and almost like a user interview or a research discovery interview.
Yeah.
Letting the uncomfortable silence sit.
Yep.
So that you learn more.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. And can I ask, even in this early stage, what do you look for from an audience as to who you're asking these questions to?
Could be anyone. It's often best if you're kind of dealing with the subject matter expert or the champion.
Right. Okay.
Which may or may not be the person wearing the product manager hat or the product owner hat, but trying to find that champion of what's going on, because they're the ones either that have initiated the product or know it really well. And so trying to find them and listen to them and get the perspective from them. And sometimes if you're dealing with a larger team, it's going to involve this. You kind of got to run through this with multiple people because they might only have different pieces of the puzzle.
And I imagine in that instance, sometimes you may discover completely different answers or even conflicting answers.
Yeah. Well, and that's where this kind of having a method really helps, because you can get everyone on the same page instead of it being this kind of nebulous thing. You can bring everyone down and say, right, here's what we're going to run through, so we can all get on at least one common page of understanding.
Right. Okay. You mentioned a couple of the steps there, and you said Lean Canvas works for you. Can I ask, how did you come to that? What was your approach as to why that particular artifact works for solving this problem?
Yeah, because it just gives you, I'm a big fan of simplicity, and it gives you a really simple way on a page that almost everyone can, on the surface, understand of all the different things that matter to a product or a business. And that's really why I've found it a great tool. And I kind of mix it up between Lean Canvas and Business Model Canvas. I know there are some differences, but it kind of it doesn't matter too much which one you pick, as long as you're kind of picking something to put it in.
Can I ask, how often does it turn out that some of the questions you're asking haven't been thought about before?
Every single conversation.
Right.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter saying it doesn't matter the depth of experience, but I find probably in about 5% of people, they've kind of sorted it all out or have a plan for sorting it out because they've literally used the same kind of tools or a similar framework, but a lot of people are missing a few of the ingredients.
Right. Okay.
And that's part of it. I think that's one of the other great things about bringing frameworks to bear is it helps you check where your blind spots are.
Right. When you're working through this, is there anything that goes wrong?
Yeah, we're talking about so Lean Canvas. If you chat to most people in product or tech, they're going to say, "Oh, I know that canvas." Or if you talk about customer value proposition, I know about customer value proposition. What I've found is that you can't always count on the depth being there. Okay. And also people understand different parts of those differently, I've learned. Yep. And so a lot of it's about talking it through, not to say my understanding's any better or worse, but really just recognizing that everyone brings their own set to play, and you've really got to get into the detail of each of the boxes on that, so to speak. So I think where it often goes wrong is getting into one of those boxes. So you say, one of my favorite ones is revenue. That always trips up, or cost. And you say revenue, we're going to charge people a subscription. that's not an acceptable answer to the revenue box because the devil's in the detail. Is the subscription going to be $1 a day or $2,000 a day? There's a pretty big difference around that so you really got to get into, and that's where I love it, is it kind of prompts you to go deeper and to say, no, let's really answer this specifically.
Right.
What is the subscription going to be? What's the price point going to be? Why are we choosing that price point compared to others? Now, you don't need to be a pricing expert, but at least apply some level of thought to it, or know that you haven't applied that thought and you need to come back to it. And I think that's often sometimes where it goes wrong, is superficial answers that really, instead of giving an answer, it should say our hypothesis is blah, but really we need to go do a lot of work to put some detail here, and kind of giving the gaps where you've got to go deep. So I think that's one of the big ones. Same with the customer value proposition, things being written a bit superficially.
Okay.
I think roadmaps are a whole other topic, but what I really look for is not feature list, but jobs to be done, or benefits to the customer being mapped out, like direct, measurable, objective kind of benefits being mapped out on a roadmap. Right.
Okay. Brilliant. And you mentioned, we talked about time boxing this in under 2 hours. So how do you structure so many intimate, like you've got to build rapport, you've got to get some quality into the canvases, which I'm assuming takes a little bit of iteration.
Yeah.
How do you manage your time around this?
Oh, yeah. So it often depends in each session, right? Because often some things are pretty easy and you can just knock them over. So I always start with, once you've done a bit of the early discussion, I always start with the things that are easy. There's often a few things that are easy. Knock those off so you can kind of tick them off. And then that gives you, where's there ambiguity, where are there issues, and you can then focus there. So how do you structure the time? The other thing I want to make clear is it's not, understanding it doesn't necessarily mean having answers for everything. Yep. Sometimes it's about, as I just said, having more listing your assumptions and knowing where your assumptions are, knowing where your risks are, knowing where you don't know something is all about understanding it. And I think, an angel investor read it and said, I should be using this to understand what the investments I'm thinking about, which gives you a good, if they're going to use it for due diligence, then you kind of get this sense that at least it's going to highlight the risks that they need to investigate further. And that's really, really what the method I'm talking about is all about.
Can I ask, is the responses you get and the confidence of those responses very different between startups and some of your bigger enterprise clients?
Yeah, it's a super interesting question. The yes and no. So sometimes often the enterprise or large tech company, enterprise or even government will have done more in the research side.
Okay.
But sometimes it's giving them a false set of confidence. So they'll have done 3 months of research, whereas the startup will have put something in market,
right,
and they've both got blind spots in different areas. So whereas, the bigger company has kind of had, product manager, user experience person, service designer, some market analysts kind of out there interviewing customers for 3 months, what they're getting is really good understanding of the domain of what, based on what people are saying. Whereas a startup will launch something maybe with missing a bunch of blind spots of industry structure or something like that, but they're getting direct feedback on what's going on. So I think just being aware of the different blind spots that are typically generated by the two types.
So both have got the ability to learn, but in the instance of a startup, they're trying to learn rapidly because obviously cash is ticking away in the till, and in the enterprise or government space, they're taking their time to learn, but I'm assuming the experimentation on the solution side is much slower and longer. So different types of learnings.
Being aware, and I think being aware of that natural tendency can really help. So just being aware of it. So the enterprise will be having, I would say, a lot of false signals potentially, because they're not, people are saying, I like the idea. Or,
Right.
if in the interviews, you're going to get information, but then their actual behavior, if you were to put a product in front of them, might be completely different.
Okay. Government entities often, people assume really slow, not focused on the customer, only develop utilities. But you've been working with governments for a long time. Can you tell me about the shift of mindset there?
It's so exciting, actually.
Right. Okay.
I get so motivated when I walk into a lot of the government organisations now. Not all of them, but there's quite a few now where you walk in and they've got dashboards up on the walls. They're measuring their analytics. They're out interviewing their customers. They're applying best practice in their environment, and it's really exciting because as a citizen, to know that there's people out there that care and are applying the practices that the likes of Google and Facebook have been using to grow their businesses. They're trying to apply those to making our world better. It's really exciting. They've got some constraints. Everyone does, but the fact that they're applying it, I think, puts it miles ahead of what it used to be.
That's really interesting. When I think about governments, organisations, the reach and the impact, like as a product person, for any product, how many people can I touch and how much impact can I have on those people? Government entities, I imagine, are huge on both those metrics.
Yeah, and they have a different consideration. So we recently helped with a rural train booking service in New South Wales. And you don't think, so if it's commercial context, you're like, all right, where's the bulk of our users? Okay, just cut everyone else out. You can't do that in government. You've got to think harder about things, because if you trade off a bunch of people, there's a lot of letters to ministers flying around. But also just as a sense of good in society, the Australian kind of culture says, let's do something about it. So you've got these really fascinating product challenges that you can't actually use the typical, prioritize and...
Yeah, you can't target your early adopters just for a small segment.
Yeah, you've got to be careful, because you can't... What might work for the early adopters may be a complete non-goer for the 80-year-old couple that lives in rural New South Wales and has never used a phone, or you can't just make, or may have maybe like vision impaired or something. You can't just jump to the, just don't worry about them. We'll just build this, completely unfriendly React app for them. Yeah.
Can I ask, bringing it back to understanding the product in 2 hours, and like things like the lean canvas then, how does that, the questions and the answers to those types of problems in government and those types of users or customers would therefore be very different for something like the lean canvas or a business model canvas, I would assume. Does it change it in any way, or is it still the same?
No, not really.
Right, okay.
There's still benefit. Look, it's not as clear where the revenue is, but then I would argue in a lot of products now, especially in larger organizations, it's not as clear where the revenue... Yeah, like if you're a product manager in a big team, or you're building a product in a larger organization, your revenue attribution is so far removed from what you're doing that, when you write, well, what's the revenue model? It's like, well, the organization gets paid from some other thing offered in some other part of the organization, and we kind of help people sign up to it, for instance. But is that revenue attributable to us? Probably not.
With revenue being such a lagging indicator of success, it may be the wrong metric.
Right, and also from the point of view of if you're trying to communicate and own responsibility, you can't take responsibility for something you can't control.
Right. Okay. When you've been working through these types of sessions and you've got this time box, what's the next objective with everything you learn? How do you prioritize or move on from this type of session?
Well, I think as we were saying earlier, you get some assumptions. You start finding out where the gaps are, where you've kind of answered superficially or without very specific answers. You can really go, okay, we've got to do more work here. So it gives you a bit of a plan of where there's a bit of homework to be done, maybe some mini projects to do research, whether it's more customer interviews or more market mapping or whatever it might be. It gives you a really good set of where you've made assumptions, so you can start prioritizing which ones you want to knock off you might delay some. Then it also will give you a sense of what you need to understand next, like going to that next level of detail, because customer value prop, lean canvas, a bit of a roadmap, a bit high level. And so, the sense can be one thing, but when you get down into the detail, it might not be achievable.
Right.
It might be that the technology is not there or can't get there. It might be that the user experience is completely different to the customer value props that is required, and you've really got to get in. So really, then it's the CVP, the customer value proposition, and the lean canvas kind of give you where to go and focus, because they're going to call out what's important to the customer, what's important to the business, and you can say, all right, that's where we need to go jump into next in a detailed way.
What I love about the outcome of this is that it could have impact up at strategy or all the way down at delivery and anywhere in between, which is great to see such a loose set of outcomes available from something that's so sort of simply repeatable.
Yeah.
Where can people read or discover more about how you're doing this, Scott?
So all this is published on the Terram blog, so terram.com.au/blog.
Great.
And there's plenty more up there, different ideas.
I've got one more question that springs to mind with a consultancy like yourself that's coming in as an external, and you're trying to get to these really honest outcomes for the better of everyone.
Yeah.
How do you create trust with employees or people who feel that they may have failed if you highlight a gap on a roadmap or a competency that doesn't exist?
Yeah.
How do you create that trust?
It's one of the most energizing parts of, and
Right.
I've had some of our teams say to me that this is the bit they love, like having to prove themselves each time, because the bar's so much higher when you're kind of coming in.
Right.
So we've got to, and that's why I really at the outset I was saying ask lots of questions. You want to be building rapport, and I often find for us not jumping, not trying to lead people to where we want them to go versus answering on their behalf, because you can often see in the first 5 minutes a mile out where you need to get to once you've been through enough of these conversations. And I think, but what we do is directly applicable to if you're managing internal stakeholders as well, especially in a larger organization where that rapport's not there because the teams are in different locations or just different parts of the organization. So I really think asking a lot of questions is the big one, and again, trying to draw things out of people versus give them the answer. It's really the big driver of trust building, and it's the hard thing. You've really got to establish that, for us at least, in our ethos, is we're there to be part of the team, not a replacement. We're not trying to show them up.
Yep.
We just want to come in and give the objective approach, as objective as you can be, and that's why we bring frameworks to bear. So it's not our opinion. We're trying to just shepherd things into the right framework and add our experience that we've seen before. And
finally, can I ask, is this something that you practice and go through on site every time? Is it possible to replicate remotely for those listening around the world?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
You just go through the questions. You'd get a virtual whiteboard, get a
Awesome.
fire up Google Slides.
Yep.
Share it together.
Cool.
In fact, it's almost there's a whole lot less rekeying of answers at the end.
Right, okay.
If you already fired up the Google slide,
you've got it all captured.
Yeah, you're already there. Whereas, there's often time spent after the fact loading it up. So
right, brilliant. This has been great. Thanks for sharing so much and so honestly about what you've sort of obviously tested and learned over time to get to this point.
No worries. Thanks, Jay.
It's been a pleasure. It's been great to talk about this. If you'd like to know more about this, as Scott mentioned, visit terram.com.au and check out the blog there. Scott also writes on Product Coalition, so if you search Scott Middleton on the productcoalition.com site, you'll find Scott's writings as well if you want to learn more there. It's been good fun.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. Please subscribe to us on your favourite podcast player, however you consume us, is Product Coalition. And I look forward to sharing another Sydney-based guest with you next week. Thank you all. Cheers.